let's just see.
Hey, did you see the post that Mirror put on Instagram?
No.
Here, I'll pull it up 1 second.
Huh.
So our shorts editor posted on Instagram. She hit me up yesterday and she's like, "Hey, I have this post. Can I put it up?" And I was like, "Sure." And I thought it was one of the posts that she had created for a class, and like a short that we post on YouTube, but it wasn't. And within like 20 or 30 minutes of us posting, Penn State accepted this Instagram feature where you kind of like dual post. So we posted it not only to our channel, to our Instagram page, but we also put it on Penn State's page as well. And so it's gotten well over 100,000 views and 5,000 likes, and it's a cute video. So here, let me pull it up. It's like 8 seconds long. I hate how Instagram does that.
Let me look at it.
So what's your vision for this room?
To fill it. I just want people here all the time. More importantly, I want for people to feel like they can stay, you know?
So what's your vision for this room?
So it's a cool video. I hope you guys could hear that.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I heard it. Huh. Who is that talking?
It's a sound. So on TikTok, it became very popular where you could put sounds over your videos. Some people lip sync to it. Some people add it as some other type of feature. And then this one is just kind of like if you want to think of it like an audio background, and you can put some video over top of it. And
Yeah.
so she did that for our class. And then the caption was just saying that Social 19 taught by you is the largest race and ethnic relations course in the country. And then we posted afterwards to join at 4:30, because once Penn State picked it up, thousands of people were seeing. My mom saw it. So yeah, it was cool. It's a good post. It actually is a great post, not a good post.
Hey, no, very cool. Yeah. I mean, yeah. It's so funny for me that I don't have any sense or any interest or I'm just not invested, I guess, into views and people watching things. Maybe that's I think that's where you come in, Jeff. You know what I mean? Like I can't, somehow I just can't get invested in it. If I do, I feel like it changes things, changes how I see things, how I talk about things, the kind of the roller coaster of it.
It was really cool so for anybody who has found the YouTube channel because of that post, welcome, and join us during class. We'd love to see you in chat. But it's been cool seeing a lot of alumni bring up, fresh eyes. I took this class in 2001.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of different things from the past. It's really been cool. A bunch of people tagging their friends that they took the class with. And then there were a bunch of people who I responded to who I was like, because they said, this is a class that we still need now. And I was like, hey, we stream. So
yeah,
now they'll be aware of it, which is really cool.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, it's surprising that a lot of people don't realize that we stream, and then we stream it live. I talk to a lot of students, former students. This is about 50,000 have been in the class since I started teaching it. I think that's the number. Yeah. Hey, Greg, I see that you got 5 more years, man. All right. Hey, I saw that I got an email from you, and I've been so crazy busy because I'm leaving for Korea on Friday, early Friday morning, and just trying to get a million things done. So I haven't been able to. Yeah, but I see this email, and you said, yeah, you're seeking a soft landing also. Yeah. Yeah, no kidding, man. And I think that's really, yeah. So I didn't get a chance to really respond. It was just in my inbox, and I now saw your name. So anyway, if you have any particular questions, put them in the stream, and I'm really happy to respond right now, actually, since we're just have a couple things to go. I'm trying to stay really centered with things. I want to be just kind of go with stuff with the incoming administration. Like I'm torn, right? I'm torn in so many different ways, right? Like it's change is always a good thing, and but change also can be a little bit of I don't know, just a bit too much, right? So I'm feeling right now, I'm not paying a lot of attention, because I'm really busy trying to finish a lot of things that I need to finish and get ready for this trip. It's 2 weeks. We're going to Vietnam for a few days and then to Korea. And I got a lot of stuff to do in Korea, so it's really gets me. It just but I like change. I'm a sociologist, so I have this kind of sense that like stasis and reproduction is the norm in the world. That's because most of what we do is just reproduce what is around us, systems like reproduction, and they are organized toward reproduction. That's kind of the nature of how all systems operate, whether they're biological or sociological or whatever they are, right? But the degree to which change happens, and I tend to enjoy change because that's the nature of it. I've lived my whole life trying to change patterns in my own behavior, and one of the reasons I live the way I do is because I really like change. I want to change my mind. I want to put myself in situations where I see something differently, and I experience things that provoke or prompt me to see things, to change something about the way I'm living my life or thinking about life or making sense of life. And then, of course, being a teacher, that's just an inherent part of being a teacher, that we're teaching to fine tune the way we live, right? To really understand things as best that we possibly can, so we can live the best life that we can live, right? We're passing information and ideas on to students. And of course, that's more true for those of us who are teaching about human beings than people who are teaching, I don't know, like microbiology or something, or architectural engineering or high school health, right? But in any case, so I'm torn right now because I'm like, well, all of these systems, they would do well to be disrupted a little bit. They always are. And, bring some new blood in and see what happens, But man, this incoming administration is going to test that in me to a big degree, man. With some of the, it's going to test that. That's all I can say. And, wow, so, you can push things hard, but you can only push them so hard. You can go a little too far, too fast, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm not paying too close attention, and I'm trying not to, you know what? I would move. I'd love to. I enjoy life in Korea. I really, really like Korean culture, and it suits me well. It fits very well with my personality. But who knows? At some point in time, I might spend an elongated period of time there. But I don't know if that'll happen. I don't think. And by the way, Kathleen, I wouldn't say we're not doomed with Trump. Like, that's the thing. I really don't. I'm not thinking that. Like, we're, this is a really intensely, I don't think that. I think Trump is going to offer some really, really important things that is going to really push. It's like a stress test of the system, and push some things forward that need to be on the agenda, right? It's just, you can't push too fast and too hard, but sometimes you have to. So we'll just see. But I know I'm not feeling like we're doomed. I'm just feeling like we're in for a heck of a ride, man. And wow, there are a lot of things that get talked about. There are a lot of just people can talk big talk, right? We're going to get rid of all the woke shit, as the guy said in the military. He's like, well, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. And there's not that much woke stuff in the military to start with, but you're not going to get rid of it, because the military is, our military in the United States is the most multicultural institution in the United States. And you're not, when you get people from these many different backgrounds coming together, and they mostly get on quite well, because they're in it for a similar cause, and we're a volunteer military. So the majority of people who are in the military are in there for a mix of things. And one thing is, an element of patriotism, but the other thing is very much as a career, whether it's a 4-year career or 10-year or 20-year, and of something to do, right? And people want to test it out, test their mettle, see, let's give it a shot. I mean, where else can you go? For example, that at some point in your life, you can join something, and for 4 years, at the very least, you can be trained for a job and do the job. And at the end of 4 years, and be taken care of, you have all your bills paid for, and be taken care of, and experience lots of people and experience lots of things. And at the end of 4 years, you go back to your other life. I mean, you really, there aren't many places where you can really do that, right? Like I can move right now, I could move to California and get a job as a barista at a Starbucks or something, but and then 4 years later, come back to Penn State. But like, it's not the same. So, the military is a very, very fascinating, complex, multicultural experiment in social living. And it's automatically, at this point in time, it's automatically woke, so to speak, right? Because people are going to be talking about these issues related to diversity and inclusion issues and so on. And you can't get around that. And so this idea that somehow that's a huge problem makes me really just wonder about whether you got a lot of blustery talk, a lot of hot air that's just it's just gonna fade away over time, because it's just like you're not gonna round out. We have, it's estimated that we have consistently had, by the way, since I was studying unauthorized, undocumented, illegal immigration back in the mid 1980s, a long time ago, man, 40 years ago, since I was studying, the number of undocumented people in the US was between 9.5 million and 11.5 million. It just sort of consistently was in that range, has been in that range. Well, right now it's estimated to be in the past couple of years, it's gone up to about 12.5. They estimate somewhere between 12 and 13 million. So it's not that big of a change. I mean, 1 million people is a lot of people, but relatively speaking, it's not. And so, I was thinking today about, okay, we're going to start this rounding people up. You're going to round up, let's just call it 13 million people. Like, where are you going to start on that? Like, how are you going to do that? And you understand the resources that you would need to do that. We're going to put people on planes. It's like, what? Hang on. First off, you have to find them. You got to make sure you get the right people. Then you have to put them in detention, because you got to make sure that who you have in detention is actually the person you're looking for. That costs a lot of money. You know, who's going to take care of that? Who's going to make all that happen? And then you got to get them. Once you find out that that is the person, and you know, you don't need like a big huge court case, but you got to have you got to just make sure you walk through the steps, because you know you can't be sending citizens somewhere on a free airplane ride. And that's quite unconstitutional, you know. So even without pushback from pro-immigration groups or immigration rights lawyers and so on, it's gonna, to do it quickly, it's gonna still take time. And then you got to get people on somehow on a bus, on a plane, on something. Like, let's say you're going to put them on a bus. It's like, well, it has to be a secure bus. You got to get them to the border. And then where are you going to take them once you cross over the border? You know, just like, that's it, cross over the border. And then they just come back over. You know what I mean? I mean, when you stop and think about what it means to repatriate to their own countries such a large number of people, just 50,000 people would be an enormous task. And so I listened to the words of folks, you know, the bluster, right? The hot air. And I just think, oh man, come on, man, let's be realistic about this. And so even if we wanted to, and even if we wanted to simplify it, it would be just a task of such great enormity. So, you know, I'm always using the Penn State football stadium, which seats, you know, 100,000 people. And I just, in my mind's eye, I look at 100,000 people and, you know, think, okay, we're going to figure that out. And it, you know, in our community here, every community, there are people who are undocumented. It's like, all right, well, how could you pull that off? So anyway, that's the stuff that's kind of akin to, you know, a politician saying, hey, I'm going to put everybody back to work, and I'm going to, you know, bring support unions, and I'm going to support big corporations, and I'm going to cut taxes for everyone, and I'm going to this, and I'm going to that, and I'm going to lower gas prices, and I'm going to do all the things that politicians promise to people. And people don't sit back and say, wait, how are you going to do all that? We're gonna get rid of taxes. Like, okay, how are you gonna plow the snow on my street when it snows? Like, how are you gonna take care of that? Who's gonna pay for? Wait, you're gonna cut off Obamacare? Oh, okay. So the tens of millions of people who get their insurance with the help of Obamacare, like, where are they gonna get health insurance? Like, how's that gonna happen? Like, when's that gonna happen? You know, so it's just that kind of stuff. You know, Harris, I listened to Harris in the campaign, and my God, the promises that came out of the Democrats were just like, how are you going to pay for all that? So it's just kind of, it's hard. It's hard to be a realist, you know. Yeah, it's hard to be a realist. I don't know. Maybe I'm not a real. Anyway. Yeah. You know, Robbie McKinn, the education system needs an overhaul. Yeah. Yeah, it does, but man, does it though, really? Like, I mean, it does and it doesn't, right? Like, think about, every district is different, right? Every school district is different. So it's like some school districts need an overhaul for sure, and others don't really. Others are doing quite fine. They're doing very well. Teachers are doing very well. Teacher-parent relationships, for the most part, are pretty positive. I mean, it's like, it's all kind of relative. And then if you think about it, well, what's school anyway, right? Like, mandatory schooling for people. It's like, why do we have that at all? Well, we have it because, you know, we got to do something with kids. Yeah. Now, I have no question that a lot of education is just absolutely meaningless, man. I mean, my school for me was where I went to just have fun with my friends. But you know, anyway, but that's it. That's a long time ago. So,
It's funny you brought that up. A buddy of mine asked me the other day. He said, "Hey, since America spends so much money on our public education system, why are we not number one in the world in our like in terms of intelligence?" And the first two things that popped into mind was hogwans and how the U.S. doesn't have as much of a push towards education after school, whereas it's mostly just homework based, studying based, and then students usually have some type of extracurricular activity or friends or something, hopefully, that, you know, they spend some of their evening with or their weekends with. Whereas in East Asian cultures, it's much more likely that they'll be in school until 8, 9, 10 p.m. And the second is that there's no real way of doing national testing. Like you said, each district is different. Pretty much each state is able to regulate what has to be taught in public schools. And we don't have a way of like testing that nationally that could be done in a certain way. It just doesn't exist in the United States at currently. Like there just isn't. Like we have the SATs and the ACTs, but that's for like colleges and stuff. But that's not national necessarily. I know in Pennsylvania they do the PSSAs, but again, that's a statewide thing. That's not a national-wide thing. And I'm wondering how much of like so for countries like China, since they're so big, and they have lots of students going through and lots of tests being taken, I wonder if they, when going to like these international studies of education among different countries, I'm wondering how much numbers are different there or impacted differently there versus here, how they get those numbers and all of that kind of stuff. That'd be very interesting for me. But those are the two things that I thought. We don't have the same culture, and there's no real way of like nationalizing, especially with the next administration wanting to get rid of the Department of Education. There's not going to be any more like nationalized anything.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is part of the problem, is that if we when we deregulate anything, right? You know, so for example, you know, I read these people writing about, you know, their airplane experiences, right? And how just terrible the experience is. Like, oh my God, Delta is like the worst airline ever, or United or American or whatever it is, right? And so people write about these terrible experiences, people getting stuck on the tarmac for 3 hours or 4 hours, or they go back to the gate and the flight gets canceled, and they don't give them hotels, they don't give them food, they don't give them anything, and people are just stuck in the middle of nowhere with nothing, right? Well, you have no regulation. You have no way to, and then people complain. They're like, you know, the airlines shouldn't be able to do these kinds of things. Well, that's what regulation is. You know, without that, like airlines will just do whatever they want to do. And, you know, like, I mean, we say, well, but if they don't do a good job, people won't fly them. Well, you basically in the United States got a handful of airlines. And so which ones are you going to fly? And, you know, everybody that critiques Delta, you know, it's like, I had the worst experience on Delta. I'll never fly it again. Okay, so you start flying somebody else, but the other people who have the worst experience ever on American come over and they fly Delta. You know, so in the end, it just keeps going. Like you're not going to stop it, and that's the point of regulation. And you know, so how are you going to? If the police are regulation, let's deregulate everything, including the police. Okay, well, the police exist for regulatory purposes, right? If we didn't have regulation on the highways, you know, you get hot rods out there going to drive 100, 110, 120 miles an hour. Like, I don't want that. I don't want to be on a highway where people drive like that. So it's part of this balance of life that we when we find ourselves, whenever I find myself with really extremist, and when I say extremist, I mean like outside the boundaries of, you know, something, right? Or thinking that extremist thinking, or thinking that seems really, really clear. I always stop myself, because it's never that clear. It just never is. So wait, hang on. I'm going to have to really. Man, I got a tickle in my throat. This is going to haunt me for the next whatever. Um, yeah. Yeah. It's just, so going back to the airlines, or just something like that, regulation like that, that's just like this is, it just makes this, in order to live in large groups of people with big, massive companies and corporations and so on, right? You got to have regulation. You have to have people who are overseeing what's going on. And like, I have it in my class. There are people that, above me who are like, hey, Sam, you can't do this. And hey, Sam, you can't do that. And hey, Sam, make sure you do these things over here. And like, I have to follow certain rules. And that's probably a good thing, because if I wasn't following the rules, I'd be just doing whatever I want to do. And that could be a problem. It's a problem for students. Like, people don't have any sense of what's not going to have a sense of what's going on, and that kind of stuff. So it's like, it's okay, right? Too much is too much, but some of it is necessary. And I don't know where to draw the line. Well, where we draw the line is that some people, the air marshal is the regulation. Yeah, right. But and you don't have an air marshal on every airplane, and the air marshals cost a lot of money, and the air marshal isn't gonna take care of the issue when the airline loses your bag, and they say like, "Hey, we're not responsible for that," And the only thing that got them responsible for it is because federal regulators came in and said, listen, you can't treat your customers this way. You're going to, like, for example, they can't be sitting on a closed airplane on the runway for more than, what is it, 2 hours now, or 90 minutes or whatever. And you have to bring them back to the gate. I mean, there's just different things. Like, that's the nature of life, folks. Like, man. And what we see is, we see these extreme cases that lead us to want to pound our fists. But what we don't see are all the thousands and thousands of ways in which regulations are really helping. And I'm not promoting more regulation. I'm promoting just a natural, just see it for what it is, which is inevitable. And we want it, and we all benefit from it to differing degrees. We just don't like the regulations when they get in our way, but we like them when they're helping us and when they're on our side. So, it's just a thing, it's where we're at, man. I don't know, it drives me nuts sometimes. It drives me nuts all the time. All right, what else do we have, then? Hey, can you, if Democrats and Republicans don't find a way to settle their differences aside and learn to work together, we're in, Judson, I will say we're going to be in deep trouble. Well, here, look, the Republicans just chose a Senate leader who's kind of mainstream party oriented, right? They didn't go with Trump's leader. Basically, they said, hey, we're going to hold up, we're going to put a bit of a wall up to Trump here. We're going to put somebody in power who's going to just kind of make sure that things don't go too far. These excesses don't go too far. Yeah. That's the key. So they did that. And so, they're working together, man. There are a lot of people who are Republicans and a lot of Democrats. They've been around a long time. They've been working together a long time. They're having all sorts of conversations right now about how we can keep things floating, because, some of us who are thinking about, wow, man, if we don't figure out how to make this work, and we split apart, that's going to be really ugly. Well, they're thinking the same thing. So I think that they're, I'm just holding it down that they got this, Yeah. Wait, go back. Put that up again. John Thune, she got off the phone with 3 Senate Republicans are excited and ready to get to work implementing President Trump's agenda on behalf of the American people. Yep, you're going to say that too, John Thune. Like, you're going to say that, but you're not a Trump person. And, you know, you're a bit more mainstream than Trump. And so we're going to say things, but we say one thing and we do other things. And so, you know, these people are pretty aware of what's happening. And everyone's a little bit concerned. Yeah. Both parties, Eric, both parties feed from the same trough. Well, the trough is just money, you know, like and this is where, you know, we say, hey, we've got this really great system. But if you think about it, here's the system, right? We have a system in which to get elected, including many judges, right? To get elected, you have to go out and raise money from people who have money. Okay. You can try to do it like Bernie Sanders, which is, you know, get like $5, $10, and $20 from lots and lots of people. Look at, there's Biden. Biden's he's still moving. Man, there we go. Man. So you got to go out and you got to raise money from all these folks who have money, right? And again, you could do it like Bernie, where you get $5, $10, $20 from lots and lots of people, or you can get thousands, tens of thousands, and hundreds of thousands from smaller numbers of people. And then you use that money to get elected. But, you know, when you receive money from someone, there's always, at some level, when it's a lot of money, a quid pro quo. You know, you're going to expect something back from the money. I mean, that's the nature of it. So you put these groups together and you have a big fundraiser, and you have your agenda, and, you know, the fundraiser raises, you know, $8 million, and that's just part of it. That's the nature of how your politicians get elected. Okay. Based on money. Well, in a way, the entire system is based on bribery, if you think about it, because, you know, you say like, well, if you want me to do something for you, then you're going to have to pay me for that. That's like the fundamentals of bribery. So we have this so-called democratic system that's based on a bribe. Now, it's not clear in that way, but I'm talking about what bribery is sociologically, right? That, you know, you say like, well, give me some money, and you could say just thanks for the money and walk away. But almost always there's something tied to the money, and so I don't know how. I don't know of a better. I'm not really. Maybe it would be we would take public tax dollars, and, you know, we have a certain amount of money for every election, top to bottom. Like, you know, you can't raise money outside of this. I mean, we already have this, right? So candidates are able to get money from the government, a small amount of money. But maybe, you know, the entire thing is publicly funded. And I'm not really sure, but it just strikes me as a very odd thing. So you got Republicans and Democrats eating from the same trough. Well, they're doing the same thing to raise money. And, you know, they're going to naturally be beholden at the higher levels, right? Not at the lower levels, like here in my local town and that kind of thing. It doesn't really matter, but you know, you're beholden, man. And so, okay, you know, here we go. Is that the kind of system that we want? Is that really, and is that what we would say is the best possible system? Yeah, right. Isn't that it having donors picking the candidates, and then people vote on those donors and the parties pick? Yeah, well, it's kind of what it is, really, right? It's like I'm not, you know, there's a perfect system, obviously, but it just strikes, and there's nothing we're going to do about it. We, meaning like anybody who's in this chat right now, because, you know, the folks that are making the decisions are not, they're not here. They've got the whole system it's just different. It's just that it's organized in a way that really doesn't have a lot to do with us. So there we go, man. Bribery and blackmail. Yeah. Yeah. All right. What else do we have? I wonder. I've been wondering about this. I don't know what other people are thinking, but I don't. I'm not like really big on patriarchy and misogyny and so on, right? And like and people. I think we've just come a long way in terms of women's power and women's rights. Okay. I mean, it's really profound how far we've come. The whole world really, except, like the Taliban went backward, but it's, and yeah, it's profound really. But I really wonder about, having a woman as a president here in the U.S. And I wonder how much Kamala Harris just being a woman took votes from her. I think about that a lot. Like and especially when I think about, wow, man, look at like Latinos voted, just really in the end, like didn't bring out the vote. And I think, okay, you got all this machismo and Latino culture, I don't know. It's a very, I'm just wondering that. I can't make any prognostications, but I really wonder about that. Yeah. How much that came into play. Huh. Thank God I don't have to, have any answers to any questions. Hey, Jeff, can you put up Kenneth Randolph's question over your career? Has your teaching style changed to adapt to different demographic cohorts or kinds of learning? Yeah, I would say my teaching, I think it has changed. I think that luckily I've been able to adapt to it very easily because I'm a globalist, but we have far more international students coming to Penn State, and far more students here at Penn State, for example, who are interested in global issues. Now, mind you, the international students, they want a U.S. education. So they're not coming here saying like, hey, you need to talk about global issues. Like I never have international students who say that. They really want to learn about the U.S. I mean, that's part of coming here is to do that, right? So you're coming to the U.S. from Hyderabad, India, right? You're like, yeah, you want to learn about U.S. culture, right? So people don't make those demands. But for me, what happens is I see the opportunity that international students bring. Like in yesterday's class, the two women from Indonesia. So I was like, well, I'm going to take advantage of that. So in that sense, my teaching style has changed to adapt to the different demographic cohorts that I see. The other side is that different kinds of learning. What I find is that with technology, students can find ways to not do their work. Yeah, it's much easier. And back in the day, you have these pencil and paper exams, or you have blue books, and what they have, right? You're watching them right in the room, and they're taking an exam, and there's no cheating at all. I mean, it's really difficult to cheat. So my teaching style has changed, that I have to adapt to the opportunities, the innumerable and growing opportunities that students have to not actually do their own work. And that's kind of disappointing, really. So one thing that happens in class is sometimes you hear me, I said it yesterday before class, sometimes I mute the microphone because I don't want to put it on the stream, but we have students, they have to take a little quiz on their phone. We have this course system, it's called Canvas at Penn State, and they log into Canvas, and there's a little question right there that they got to answer. That's their attendance. So they get 1.5 points for that. And then at the very end of class, they take another one and they get 1.5 points. So they've been there the whole time, right? If they miss the quiz, they don't get the points. If they come late or they leave early, they don't get the points. But, students will come and they will take the quiz. And then like 2 minutes later, they get up out of their seat and they leave. And I'm like, what the hell? What is that? How do you, in your mind, how is it that you could possibly feel entitled that you could take the quiz and get the points for being in class and then get up out of your seat and leave after having just gotten the first 1.5 points? And maybe what they decide is like, well, I won't worry about the second 1.5 points, but I'll get the first half the credit for attendance on that day. Or students will try to sneak into the classroom at the very end and take the quiz to get the last 1.5 points. Or students' friends will not be in class and they'll just text them the code so that they can just be on their phone anywhere and take the quiz, right? Because we can't stop that from happening. And yeah, Greg, I completely agree with that. So there's a certain kind of entitlement that I'm seeing that I didn't see in the past. And part of it is because students are so used to getting higher grades. There's grade inflation starting from the very beginning of their educational careers. Two, it's very expensive to go to school. You pay a lot of money. A place like Penn State, if you're out of state, I mean, you're paying in the mid to high 40s for a room and board here, and that's a lot of money for a state school. And so, when you're paying that kind of money, you kind of, or your parents are, I don't know, right? You feel there's a kind of entitlement that I can understand. Like, I absolutely get it. That like, hey, I'm paying all this money, man. I better get, I want to make sure that I can't lose points for this because I have to leave class because I have to go to a study session for my physics exam. And the physics exam is in my major and is more important than sociology. So because I can't lose these points, but I'm afraid because I can't also get a B in sociology, I need to get an A. And so there's just like this thing just takes over in people's minds, the stress of it, that they just do things like cheat, like that kind of stuff. That it's an entitlement that's like, oh my God, I can't believe that anybody would do that. And I can't believe that like parents wouldn't just rip into their children if they found out that they were doing stuff like that, But so this, unfortunately for me, whereas I didn't have to really worry about these things in the past, because the opportunities to do that weren't really there. I didn't teach in an 800 student room, 30 years ago, but still, it's just harder to do that. And so, but because it's easier now, I have to think like that. I have to think like a traffic cop. I'm always thinking of ways in which I can catch the people who are cheating, not to penalize them per se, but to scare them so they don't do it again. Like, hey, if you do this again, we're going to send this up to judicial affairs, and this could be a permanent mark on your record. Just to get them to stop. It's just like, don't do that. And also, it's just incredibly unethical, and you don't want that. And your future employers don't want that. What your future employers want is they want you to be honest and take responsibility for things that happen in your life, right? And when you don't come through on a project, that take responsibility for it. That's what any employer is going to want. So it's really that teaching has become, in that sense, just incredibly difficult, man. So most students are fine. Like they're fine. We're not generalizing. This is part of the problem, right? When you have 10% of the students that are trying to scam something in some way, or over the course of the semester, maybe it's like 20% at some point in time will try to get around something in some way, right? But 20% of 800, or maybe 25% of 800, that's a lot. That's 200 people. So it's it doesn't mean it could have all these like tiny different ways. Everyone's doing it slightly differently, but it's enough that it's very disorienting. Yeah. So thankfully, I have mostly a very positive outlook on life itself, and I see mostly the good in people, and I see that even people that when I catch them cheating in some way, like they're still they're a good person. They just made in that moment a really bad decision. Like, okay, well, take responsibility for it. And yeah, Eider, do I have advice for parents with young children to instill good? Yes, here it is. Don't punish them for when they're dishonest and stuff. Don't punish them. Help them to understand. Like, I mean, it's not just, it's like walk through. I mean, punish them. Hang on. Make them accountable is what it is, right? You just make them accountable and be consistent. It's just like, man, the parents who I know who have been absolutely consistent with their kids. Look, if you do this, then the consequence will be that. And when the child does this, the consequence is that. Like the people I know, and I've worked with so many young people, tens of thousands, man. The people I know who raise their children like that, the kids are they're the kids that I want to have as my own kids. That's the key, consistency. So it's not like they're not punishing them per se, right? They're following through on the consequences that they've already laid out are going to happen. Like when I told my one friend, for example, about I'll never forget one time, man. My one friend, he told his son, "Hey, don't I don't want you on your phone when we're in the car," and then he stopped over and he and I were talking in the front seat. His son was in the back seat. Son was like 13, I don't know, 14, and the kid got on his phone. He was looking at his phone, and my friend. It was very clear, like, I don't want you're not to be on your phone when we're in the car. It's rude, and we're going to engage each other. We talk anyway. So my friend just was like, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? Tell me what I told you about being on the phone. It's like, okay, so you're on your phone. And it went on, it was like 2 minutes. While I was there, standing right there, I watched 2 minutes. This thing it was intense. It was such an intense moment. And man, it was just, I was like, damn, that as a parent, that was so difficult to do. And yet, man, that kid who's an amazing kid, and he would never in a million years would ever be in a college, because he's in college right now, would never ever lie about some stupid thing like, I'm going to go to the bathroom. I'm just going to the bathroom after you take the quiz. You get your half of your attendance points, and then say, I'm going to go to the bathroom, and then never come back. You know what I mean? Or give us the wrong name. Okay, well, here, write your name down here, and you can sign back in when you come back in, but give us the wrong name. And like that kid, his son would never in a million years do that. And that's because my friend was consistent. Absolutely consistent, man. And never, ever just wavered on his word, and was also consistent. Said like, hey, if I'm going to show up, I'm going to show up. He would show up. I mean, it just was not that anyway. Judge, I forget who asked the question. Eider, yeah, that's my answer, man.
I'll bring in Elijah in here in just a moment, so Elijah's going to get ready. But earlier you were talking about taking shortcuts, and I want to remind the adults who are no longer students that adults also take as many shortcuts as possible. And my memory of a moment that really emphasized this was Dave Rubin, who is a right-wing talking head online, was on the Joe Rogan Experience. This was years ago, and Rubin is very anti regulation, and he was like, we should just let home builders have less regulations because the best houses are going to be the ones that rise up to the top. And Joe Rogan was like, but you don't understand, like, people will cut corners if they're able to. And I think that we look at students who do things that are like cutting corners in some way. We're like, how dare they? How could they? And then we look at ourselves in our professions, and it's like, oh, how do I cut corners or skip out on things or push my responsibilities onto somebody else, just like students do.
Well,
And
here's the problem.
It's crazy.
No, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, like, and with students, I mean, there could be a really good reason that like everybody in their group can meet at 5 o'clock except for them. So then they're just going to go ahead and sign in, and then they're going to leave, and then they're going to have a friend of them send them the text, like the code or something. And
Everyone
it's
has
for
a
good
reason.
intention, but like it's still really, really, I mean, it's cheating. It's bad.
Yeah, no, listen, no, this is the problem, right? And so you get, it becomes, so Greg, who's a teacher, right? I mean, you said, you got to have accountability, man. I mean, it really is. And we learn that, right? Students will continue to do what you tolerate, is what you said. Yeah, completely. And so for me, like we let this thing, there's a lot of it is human nature, but the problem is we got to get along together. Like we got to work this out. So, like you taking it's shopping carts back. You're at the supermarket and you empty the cart. You don't leave it just sitting in the middle of the wherever, right? You take it somewhere, get it out of the way. Well, enough people take them to the cart corrals that it just works out, and I know, it's sure the supermarkets, they pay people to take care of that, but you know what? If we all just do a little bit, this communitarian orientation where we all participate in each other's lives in some ways, it just makes living much, much nicer. Man, it makes living so much nicer. And I will tell you from spending a lot of time in Korea, man, it is so sweet to just be in all these public situations in Korea where everybody is aware of everybody else's needs and desires and concerns. And you just don't do things to disrupt the public order. You don't. And you might want to, but you don't. And it's so nice. Oh my God. It just feels so calm. And so you just don't have to worry about it. I get on the subway. Everybody is incredibly polite, and they're quiet, and nobody's putting their feet up on things, and nobody's pushing into other people's way. And oh my God, it's so nice. You know what I mean? It's like, you don't give up all your rights and your freedoms there. You're just aware of what's going on, and you want to be kind to other people. And you want to be good to other people. And the other crazy thing, like in Korea, there are so few wastebasket, like public places in public to put your trash. Like if you have trash, you're going to carry it with you till you find some sort of trash receptacle. And they're not easy to find because there aren't many in public places, and there's no trash anywhere. So I'm just like, wow, what do you do? Like I've got this plastic cup, or I got this, whatever it is. It's like, well, I put it in my pocket, or I just carry it with me until I find somewhere. And so, that's the kind of stuff, you know what I mean? That, like, wow, for me, I don't feel less me. I don't feel less of an individual. I don't feel less human. I don't feel like I give up my freedom. I don't feel anything. I feel like I gain freedom. I feel like I gain so much in those situations where I get to, I don't know, have that experience. So, hey, Axel, I'll respond to your respond to your question. Yeah, every student has a right to learn in a calm environment. Well, I don't know that, Greg. I don't know. Say it's a right, so to speak, right? But it. All I will say is, because I don't know if we have a right. I mean, I don't know that I have a right to anything at all. really. It's just like, I'm living. All I'm going to say is, for me, sociologically speaking, it is so much nicer to be in a calm environment, man. It's so much nicer to be in an environment where people are thinking about me and my needs as well as much as they're thinking about their own. It's just a really sweet way to live. And you don't give anything up. Like when I'm there, I'm thinking about other people. Like I don't want to trample on other people. I don't want to get in their way. I don't want to, inconvenience them. I mean, I have that here. I definitely have it here, but there, I'm assured that everybody else feels the exact same way. And here, I don't really know that that's the case. It's most of the time it's the case. Most of the time, here people are quite polite and, it's like, it's all good. But there it's all the time. Yeah. So that's maybe different.
Sam, what's happening? What are you noticing or seeing that's like creating that like social force? Like you're like, oh, it happens here in America, but there's like this extra like social force. It's like I don't feel less like an individual, but I also feel so mindful of like people around me. It's like, what is that thing that like makes?
Dude, I don't know. I don't know what it is. Yeah, some societies, some cultures just have that community orientation that's way stronger, as traditional cultures do, right? When people are more interdependent on other people, right? So
Right.
We see it like with like rice farming, for example, where you've got rice farming cultures are all very, very interdependent, man. The only way to farm rice is you do it with all your neighbors, because you have a certain amount of water and you have to irrigate the rice, and you irrigate one field at a time, and that means that all of your neighbors, you have to cooperate. You have to make sure that everyone's going to be in this together. You can't just go take all the water for yourself, because if you do that, then somebody else is going to come along the next time and they're going to take all the water for themselves, right? And so what you see is these kinds of cooperation that gets built into oftentimes the way societies are organized. So it's like, rice farming in East Asia and Southeast Asia it's a huge part of life, and it goes back thousands of years, right? Well, it turns out that they're also very, very communitarian in their orientation, because you got to have that. And so everybody's cooperating. And just as an example, out of which it emerges. And,
Yeah. Well, I was gonna bring it to the side of like the US, like just I know, and like is it at a place like where we are like in the world when it comes to, are you just observing the differences, or like is there anything that you're like, oh man, there's things that we can take on to like create more innovation, or are you just speaking from a sociologist, or like, what, I'm simply observing, and I don't know if we're ever even able to like get to a point where it feels that communitarian and it's like so lost? Or
I think that I don't think we will never get there. Yeah, in that sense, we've not been there. And by the way, Jeff, I'm going to respond to CS's comment about students and contradicting their co-beliefs, but don't put it up yet. Just give me a second. I think that we won't get there, but I think in a way, the web has exacerbated this sense of conflict and radical individualism that we see here, right?
the
web does, because
or the internet.
the internet. It's increasingly, there's like this doom scrolling, that you just scroll through the web and see all the negative stories. That it's just increasingly, it's like, wow, man, see, there's so much of that. It's just like one story after another. Like, am I the asshole, on Reddit, like I told my friend, you're and it's like, oh my God, just like, it's all negative stuff, and people just suck. Why do we suck that stuff up, as opposed to, wow, watch this video of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly, or like, why don't we do that? Like, why is it that watch the police, watch this person take a very simple traffic ticket and turn it into 5 felonies, you know, and you got this 15-minute video of this person arguing with the police, and then they take a swing at the police, and then it all just goes downhill. Why do we look at that stuff, you know? But we do. And so I think in this culture, we've gone overboard. We've lost our minds in terms of just posting that and getting lost in it. And, you know, you don't see that in every culture, that people aren't losing themselves in doom scrolling. Yeah. So it's also not as bad. If you just start reading stuff on the internet, it's like reading the newspaper. You just think, my God, there's murder and mayhem everywhere. It's like, no, listen, that's just the first page. And yeah, it's a, you know, we're a country of 335 million people, right? There's going to be a few murders every day. I mean, that's the nature of it, right? Somebody's going to get beheaded with an axe, you know, on their way home from the grocery shopping. Like, all right, well, but that doesn't mean that it's going to happen to you, you know? And so it's still not that common, but, you know, we love that stuff. Yeah.
So are you saying like there's like are you saying that doom scrolling and like this idea of like always seeing like this negativity there's like a correlation between like lack of communitarianism, and it's like leads us to more like individualistic, and then also what's the balance between like awareness of negative things that are happening in order to like inform, and then like that being inflated to then think that's the only worldview? I kind of asked you 2 questions, so if you need.
No, those are really good questions. I don't think that doom scrolling causes the individual. I think the individualism, this kind of sense of like that I'm an individual. Once you really plant your flag in individualism, you're planting your flag into this is my home, it's my property, it's my space. Don't come into my space. If someone knocks on my door and says, "Hey, can I talk to you about, you know, about Jesus Christ or whatever?" You know, I'm from the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Can we talk?
Making me think about the Liberty thing.
Yeah, and it's like, my sign says no solicitors. Like, go away, get the hell out of here. It's like, come on, man. They're just knocking on your door to talk about God. You know what I mean? Just relax. It's like, it's all right. It's like, it's not a big deal. But we've created this radical individualism and stuff, and somehow it just separates us psychologically and emotionally from other people, and we kind of live in that in a very strong way. And like, well, if you don't, and then it makes doom scrolling a lot easier, because it's like, you're like, oh, look at all these crazy people out there. Wow, this person's nuts and that person's nuts, and like all these crazy people, they're all nuts. Everybody's getting thrown off airplanes. You know what I mean? Like, for these stupid reasons. And like, no, they're not all getting thrown. They're not all nuts. It's not happening everywhere you turn, right? So, but it makes it easier when we have an ideology of individualism, because it's not like, hey, well, that neighbor, the person that's happening to, that's my community. We want to fix that, right? Like, I don't want to be disruptive to my community, and I don't want my community to be disruptive to me. And so, like, I want to make sure that I do the best that I can, because that's beneficial for everybody. And I want everyone else doing the best they can, because it's beneficial for me. And that's a different orientation. And it's really deep inside. In like a place like Korea, it's 50 million people. It's a small peninsula. 97% of Koreans can trace their have DNA from their great grandparents who were Koreans, so it's like, all right, you look alike and you feel alike, and you're mostly celebrating the same culture and the same holidays and the same this and the same that. So it's like, it's a lot easier than a place like the US. I mean, this is a pretty amazing place that we can be so different and yet get along as well as we do, which is pretty remarkable,
And it was making me think about like, is the social narrative like, how people were saying like they're thinking their own thoughts, they're inside their home, and now they're like psychologically separated, right? And there's so many narratives and thoughts that they can think about other people. So like their narrative on others socially. So I'm saying like about would you say it's like vastly different from like the US? So individuals' social narrative on others within their society versus like Korean social narrative of like
exactly. Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, it's a lot easier to also to justify that I live, it's easier to make sense of why I live in this sort of isolated, independent life that I live when I'm reading a lot of stuff about all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world. It's like, oh, well, no wonder I come home from work and I sit in my house and I watch television by myself or whatever it is, a lot of crazy people out there, kind of stuff. And I don't think it's not like it's so clear in that way, but it's there. Yeah, Koreans have a lot of crazy ideas too, so, but yeah. Hey, Jeff, can you go to CS to that question that I want to see okay, how do you work students through blatantly contradicting co-beliefs? All right, so like Trump is neo-Hitler and the police are gleefully gunning down minorities, but also only the police and government should have guns. Man, it's a really good question. I think for me, I just bring them up. I just bring up the contradictory beliefs and ask them to look at them. That's all I can do. And the other side is I am equally astonished at the kind of contradictory beliefs that students on the left have, as I am astonished by the contradictory beliefs that people on the right have. It's all that. Yeah, I'm equally astonished. So it doesn't matter which way I turn. I'm just like, wow, what? And I think yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to follow up with like your approach to like that astonishment.
Yeah.
What is
that? I think it's that I just the kinds of thing. Well, look, first off, man, when I'm teaching to people who are between 18 and 22 years old, right? So I'm always remembering back to when I was 18 to 22 years old. I mean, really, I couldn't hold a complex thought inside of a jar. You know what I mean? Like, God, I mean, I can just hold it. I don't remember, but I clearly was not a very good thinker. I was just trying to figure stuff out. And my students, what's so fascinating about it is when you put them on the table with a microphone, they'll write to me. They'll write in their application to volunteer. Like, I'm a hard, dyed in the wool proponent of women's rights and anti-racism and like one thing after another, right? And queer rights and like fighting for equality and U.S. anti-imperialism. Let's say something like that. So I'll bring them. I'll say like, oh, okay, I'll use this person for something, and then they come on and they sit at the table and I ask them a very simple question, and they're like, so what do you think? Like, I don't know, women's rights. Like, how much sexism do you think there is? Just something I might ask that. I don't know, whatever. That wouldn't be the question, but then they would be like, well, I don't know, actually. I'm not really sure. I'm like, wait, hang on a second. But you wrote in the thing that you were like hardcore leftist, progressive, and now suddenly, I've put a microphone in your hand and you just, you back off, right? And I think that what that says, and is probably true for most people, is that when we get asked directly to respond to something, we will readily admit or accept that we don't really know and we don't really have the answer. But if given the opportunity to jump on some chat room or whatever, we'll just like throw stuff out there very quickly. But if we're on the spot, most of us, even in the chat, like I could just grab some people out of this chat who, sometimes they get, they get going on something. Like I say, listen, hop onto the stream. And on the stream, they be far more thoughtful, civil, and willing to entertain ideas that they don't appear to be willing to entertain by what they're saying in the chat. And I think that that's actually really pretty something that we have to remember always.
So you were saying that, oh god.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna summarize and say you're saying that like, are you saying like trolling per se, like on the stream,
Yeah,
saying these
like,
things, but then
yeah,
when you give them a podium to speak,
yeah,
it's different.
yeah. You got the soapbox, so go ahead. And they'll like often not. They'll not. They won't do it, man. They'll be like, well, okay, I'm not really sure. Hey, the muse. Jeff, can you put the muse's question up there? I will. Opinionated Matt. We started an hour ago because Jeff, we have to end at 4. So Jeff said, let's just start early, and we were just gonna. Will I say something about emergent behavior absent in individuals? That occurs when groups of like-minded individuals gather collectively. Yeah, I think
describe
that.
emergent behavior.
Yeah,
Where you
well,
going?
yeah.
Or
So I think this is the idea, the muse. I think this is what you're getting at. When we are with people who we imagine think similar to us, right? It could be a sporting event, it could be a political rally somewhere, it could be just hanging out at a sports bar, rooting for a team that everybody's there to watch. It's just there's something very magical. Disturbing also, mind you, right? It can become disturbing, but from my perspective as a sociologist, it's magical the way that human beings can take on energy from the human beings around them and use that energy or that energy is just like gets inside of our bodies and it just takes us places that we would never otherwise go. Lori and I, the other day, we were having this conversation about how neither of us we don't go to concerts. We don't go to any events where we could get lost in crowd behavior. Right. So there was this sociologist, well, wasn't really a sociologist, psychologist more so, but I don't know what he was, Le Bon. And he talked about the crowd. And he's the one who first really talked about this in the early 20th century. And the passion that can just sweep through a crowd. I mean, Lori and I were talking about how we don't go to concerts. We don't go to sporting events. We really don't go anywhere where we could get swept up in a crowd because for whatever reason, the two of us, it just doesn't really, we're observers. We're these pure sociologist observers that we just sit back and we watch. We go to a movie theater. We're always in the back row, over onto the side, wherever, a theater, anywhere we are, we're always away. So we're sort of watching the performance and then watching everybody else. And it's almost like we just have this kind of natural something, I don't know, yeah, like we've been vaccinated from that. But I really would like to feel it more, but there's something that happens that's very magical that human beings can take on. And of course, it can turn very dark and very ugly. And that's why a lot of really human beings, when they're in groups and in crowds, can do really horrible things. And why sometimes, individuals should, if we were really being serious about trying to understand any of this, it wouldn't be so clear that individuals who act in illegal ways or antisocial ways or act in, just terrible ways inside of crowd situations, that they would be fully 100% responsible, because that's not like this liberal idea, like, oh, that person's not responsible for beating the shit out of these other people, like 12 people beating the heck out of somebody else, but so therefore they're not responsible because they all got swept up in this crowd behavior. But what it is like, you really have to honestly, take a fair, thoughtful, and intellectual look at what happens with people in these moments. So yeah, it's crazy.
Isn't that the trait diffusion of responsibility? diffusion of responsibility is a social psychological phenomenon where a person feels less responsible for their actions or inactions when others are present. It's
Yeah.
also the bystander effect too.
Yeah. Yeah, all that stuff. And by the way, the muse, yeah, Lori and I are the quintessential examples of individuality. We are in a really in an odd way. I don't know. It's hard for I can probably count on maybe there are maybe three times in my life when I really like
I was gonna ask you
lost
that.
myself in a group situation. Like I lost myself. I just just let it go. And I became part of like a larger vision or it was a contagion that happened. It was very cool, man. It was actually really cool. Um, yeah. So it's riots. So Dexter's Lure. Yeah. Like riot. This is rioting, like the riot it's happening. I mean, people are just in a march, right? And they're going down the street and everything's fine. And then suddenly there's a lot of energy and everyone's chanting the same thing and they're chant, whether it's, a conservative riot or a liberal riot or a march or whatever, it doesn't really matter. And everyone's doing the same thing. And then suddenly, it just goes wrong. Like, some of these Trump rallies didn't happen this time, but when he ran in 2016, we first started seeing this, like Trump, he would people were showing up to Trump rallies to protest. And then, eventually something would happen and Trump would point them out and then they would like kick them out. And as people are leaving, people are just like throwing stuff at them and beating them up and stuff because they just lost their minds. Look, the left does this also. I mean, it's not what it is, but I just had that image of like, wow, they're just sitting there just at a rally, and then suddenly before they know it, boom, they go. Or like the Black Lives Matter riot, the marches, that part of it, people then suddenly started rioting. Like people that wouldn't riot, like they show up to riot, but suddenly they are. It's like, what? Yeah.
It makes me wonder, like what does belonging like look like to you? Like is it different? Because like usually people that are in mobs or in like like they're taken up by like the social force of just like being in a group.
Yeah.
Like they usually say it's like what belonging is like a big piece.
Yeah.
So that like
Yeah.
to feel like they belong somewhere. And I just wonder,
Yeah.
like giving you a difference, the feeling how you feel different, you don't feel swept to like be in those positions. It makes me wonder like what your view of like belonging is or
Yeah, well, I feel like I don't belong. Like Lori and I, we don't have any place that we feel like we really belong anywhere, which is why I'm very much like this globalist. I can go anywhere in the world and feel at home. I can go to to a synagogue or a church or a mosque or a temple anywhere in the world and feel the God, the spirit equal for me. Doesn't matter. Or in the woods, it doesn't really matter.
right.
Yeah, I don't have that sense of belonging. And I mean, I belong everywhere. I have friends all over the world that I'm deeply, passionately connected to.
So
Yeah.
is that a thing? Like oh man, that's so interesting. It's like should people feel like they belong everywhere or should they not should
No,
they? That's not right.
no,
But like
no. I
should
think
isn't correct, but
no. I think people should just follow their own personal inclination. Some people belong most deeply in their nuclear families, some people extended families, some people communities, some people their friend groups, some people their nation. They wrap themselves in their flag, and that's really, really important to them. And that's good for them, man. That's nationalism. Good for you. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. I just happen to be this person who's always on the outside looking in. Yeah. Hey, by the way, I want to respond to wait, it would have been cool. I think someone wrote, it would have been cool to do a class asking foreign students how they view the U.S. elections with their personal opinions. I don't know why I didn't do that. I'm not sure I would have gotten a lot out of it. It's a really, really good question. I'm not sure. I don't know if we would have gotten a lot from that, because a lot of them, I think they were really not in it per se. It was like this thing that was happening around them, but not in a way that they really were deeply connected to. is what I would, yeah, it's what I really got. Yeah. Anyway, wait, hang on. The muse also said, do I go to weddings and funerals? Yeah. Yeah. And I always feel really connected to people at both weddings and funerals. I do. The funeral for the sense of just like, wow, this, just what everything that a funeral is. But, yeah, Cairo 173. Some people, no, in all of these, in the BLM protests, for example, there were some people that absolutely showed up to cause trouble, for sure. That's not a question. And there were in most of the places where the people. So I know some folks that have really studied this quite extensively, like really studied it, like they looked at some of these protests that turned into riots, and they absolutely really followed. They tracked it. They looked at satellite footage. They interviewed police. They interviewed people. They really, really were looking at it, not just what we read on the news or thought. And basically, the common thing that happened was there was a gathering of people. It could be like 5,000 to 50,000, right? Though mostly it's more like 5 to 10, and or a few thousand to 10,000. People show up to protest enough that they brought signs, and a lot of handmade signs. I mean, they were thoughtful about it. They didn't just run out of their houses and go. They showed up. It was a sign. It was like, say, we're going to meet at such place, and we're going to march to X spot, right? That's that means you've thought it out, and the word goes out that that's the way it's going to happen. And the vast majority of the BLM, the Black Lives Matter protests, happened in this way post George Floyd, and that people. But there were always some people that were really ready to take it to the next step, right? And very often what happened was that small group of people broke off from the larger group. And then they went not along the same lines as the main protest, but they went off on a side street or somewhere. And that's when things started. Then they would start, breaking windows or whatever the case is. And then sometimes people from the protest would go and follow them, and just mostly to see what the hell was going on, because people we want to watch destruction for whatever reason. And so some people, there were always some people, not always, but usually some people that showed up with a little bit more, or they were more emotional, man. They were just more like wired, geared up, and then for them, once things got popping, it was a lot easier for them to just start getting really more violent or whatever the case is. And other people, if they were feeling it, then it was easier for them to participate. But you have to get swept up in the revelry, so to speak, and that becomes that's a harder thing.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. Like, just it feels like phenomenon that are like, how can certain phenomenon be like nurtured, or are they just observable, or like nurtured as in like worked with, like managed,
Yeah.
or is it just, you're just saying some things we just do, and not
Yeah.
sure why, which
Yeah.
I want
Yeah.
more from that, but it just
Yeah.
feels like it's a lot
Nah,
more
it's kind of,
research.
yeah, it's
But
kind of interesting. Now,
there's
yeah.
like,
Hey, I want to respond to a couple things.
there's the onion
Dex,
shadow, but yeah.
Dexter's Lure Lab, you're saying that you can experience racism every day, and 90% of the time it comes from other minorities. Yeah, well, that's a thing that we absolutely see, and often, and we see that. We see it. We see it right here, man. With the push to close down the borders. People have the idea that this is like a white, whatever. Just like, yes, racism, discrimination, whatever, comes from all angles, man. Yeah, all angles, and that's why I'm always constantly trying to fight this uphill battle that it's just white people that are the problem. By the way, my students on free speech, they're pretty radical proponents of free speech, but yet they get lost because they will shut down free speech. There's always certain things that they will say, yeah, but but you can't say that. So they want free speech, but they haven't thought through the implications of saying, well, accept this speech or accept that speech, and everybody has the this or the that they feel pretty strongly about and that they feel like you shouldn't be saying. And so the problem is when you get a whole bunch of people together, pretty much everything is off limits because somebody in that room is going to say, hey, you can't talk about X or Y, you know what I mean? And so like that's our problem. That's where we're at, And the problem, of course, is, Elijah, I don't know if you see this, but there's always somebody, when one person says, I'm unhappy or I'm offended. Now in my class, this is a big deal, right? Because you got 800 people. All I got to do is offend one. And that one person has to write a letter to the authorities above me. And that one letter by the one person, even though nobody else in the room feels offended by something that is said or happens that I say or I condone because I don't question somebody else who said it or I don't correct them, that one person then becomes like, oh, Sam Richards is allowing offensive speech or promoting offensive speech or speaking offensively in his class. One thing, and then of course that's the problem that we get, that we're in. And that's when you get, there's like I'll read about, the people on the internet have a message for Taylor Swift. Okay. And I'm like, oh, what's the message for Taylor Swift? And then, I read because I'm curious about these kinds of things, then I read and it's like, well, first off, who are people on the internet? It's one Instagram post that 500 people liked. Okay. Well, Taylor Swift has got like 1 billion fans out there. So 500 people liked one post and the post was just something that was pretty irrelevant, Well, people on the internet sounds like the whole internet when it's 500 people, or maybe it's 148 people or something like that. And so that's we always have to be really cautious about that stuff.
Wait, what's the relationship you're making between like the student and then like this internet example?
Yeah, well, this like the free speech stuff, it's sort of like, oh, someone says one person says, I don't like it when people use X, right? Like, for me, for example, students who are part of the queer community say it was probably about 7 years ago, you don't use the word queer when you're my age. Like you grow up, like that was a slur. I mean, you could drop the F-bomb and that was really okay because we would joke. That was back when you could drop the N-bomb. You know what I mean? It's like people would joke about that. And then at some point in time, people decided, no, you can't drop the N-bomb at all. You can't drop the F-bomb. But the Q-bomb was that word and you just didn't say it. So, but queer students, I remember one day after classes, about 4 or 5 students, they came up to me and they said, listen, man, you got to stop saying LGBT and stuff. Just say queer, because when you say LGBT, we don't really feel like you're an ally, and we know you're an ally because it's clear that you are very much an ally and you very much understand the issues, but it just doesn't feel right. Just say queer. Like we say queer's the word, just use it. It's good. I'm like, all right. So that was in my mind. I just said, okay. And I just started using queer. But people my age, if I talk about the queer community, it's like you don't like, Elijah, you don't have a sense of this, but if you were alive 50 years ago, you'd be like, oh damn, man, you can't use that word. My God.
So people your age have the sense of like not being able to use the word queer.
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
not being able to,
So now you got one person who decides, oh, they don't want me using the word queer for whatever reason. I don't know, because it goes back and forth. And then they write a letter to the authorities above me, who are all more or less my age, who are still saying LGBT, for example, right? I mean, well, we have queer studies. I mean, it's not like, you have a queer studies department in certain universities. It's not, gay and lesbian studies, queer studies. Okay. So it's not like it's not a sense of things, right? But anyway, but it's like, well, the student's offended that you said queer, so don't say queer. And I'm like, but I've been saying queer for 10 years, tens of thousands of students, and one student is offended. How do we know that student isn't mentally ill? You know what I mean? And is the student even queer? You know what I mean? Did you ask? Like, well, we don't know because it's anonymous, So like you could post something, Elijah, right now to the Stop Hate website at Penn State saying, hey, I was listening to Sam on his podcast and he was using the word queer. And then someone's going to reach out to me and they're going to, is this true? And and like, oh my God.
And so those are things that you've had to abide by when that happened.
Yeah, you have to sort of live with that stuff, right? And so that's the problem with free speech. It's because this takes us all the way back around. Yeah, my students love free speech until it's something that they feel strongly about. And then it's like, oh, okay. Well, not that free speech. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man.
It's really funny, man. Yeah.
I feel like, is that all we can say? Like, oh, it's just really funny. Like, it's like, what else? Like,
it's sad. Well, it's deeply, dude, honestly, I'm going to drop the F-bomb. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Get ready.
Funny.
No, it's deeply fucking disturbing. Really. It's so disturbing. Really. And I don't know how, and I don't know why I keep doing what I do. And and I get the messages and like, God, I haven't had one this semester, thank God. And, and I think, dude, I look up the chain of command. I'm like, do people realize what the issues we're talking about in this class? And you get one complaint a semester, man, that's it. Like, do you have any idea? And like, they don't. They're like, yeah, we do, but just, you can't have any complaints. I'm like, dude, how about if I just go in class and read from a textbook? You know what I mean? How about if I do that? I'll just get a textbook and I'll just stand there and I'll read from it like I've seen professors do.
Right. It's like, there's so like, you're doing something so different that they like love, and they see the benefit, right? And like, the benefit of the class, but at the same time, it's like the moment like one person has a problem.
Nah, it's a thing. I just have come to live with it. Honestly, I try not to think about it too much, because if I did, I absolutely would quit. There's no way I would keep going. Yeah.
Wow. It's making me think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The disappointment is so deep and dreadful. Yeah.
The disappointment in like our society, or like education, or like administration.
Yeah, maybe administration, just how we've done. And this goes back to the very beginning of the conversation about like it goes back to the issue about schools, and do schools need to be reformed? And like, I don't know. Yeah.
It's a response is Judson Osgood. I think it's available right now.
Yeah, well, it's Judson. It's like saying, yeah, you just try to do the best you can, man. And so you just try to do the best you can. And that's what I do. Like, I'm learning all the time. Like, I'm learning. I'm taking new ideas from students. Like, oh wait, you can say that now. You can't say that now. You did this. That's. Like, I'm like yesterday. Right, I'm talking to these two women from Indonesia, and they're just using Indo. They don't say Indo. They leave off the Indonesia. It's just Indo. Yeah, Indo culture and Indo language. Yeah, I speak Indo. Like, Indo, what? Indonesian. Like, oh yeah, okay, yeah. So
But
Indo
you were
dress and Indo, and that's I've spoken with many people from Indonesia, but not like that. And I was just so, and they're young and they're just popping off like Indo, like that's the thing. And I'm like, so that's how Indos talk about Indonesia. It's just boom. So I'm learning, right? I got that. So next time I'll be in a conversation with somebody, I'll meet someone from Indo, right? And I'll just be like, though you would specifically say Indonesia, I would say Indonesia, but and
and now
and
it's
I would
that's
just be
the
like,
new
hey,
wave.
I have a question about Indo culture, and they would be like, wait, what? What did you say? Like Indo culture, And they'll be like, wait, how do you? Wait, what do you mean? Like, how'd you say that? Why are you saying that? Like, how do you know that? Like, how do so this is like how it is for me. I'm just sucking like a sponge how people are talking about things and thinking about things. And then I just kick it back out.
It's like you have to be so. It almost feels like you have to be so aware of and exposed to
Yeah.
like all the different demographics, and like how those demographics could be associated with like different ways of thinking, or like, I
Yeah.
don't know, just like, because how else do you know? Like it makes me think about like code switching now. All the
Yeah.
different,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. It really is code switching. And in a way, that's what I'm doing all the time, right? I code switch.
right?
But one thing I don't code switch is, I just when I'm in front of the classroom when I'm teaching, I'm just me. Like I don't like the language I use is the language I use if I'm talking to you out wherever and
Right.
up on campus somewhere. It's the same thing. I don't try. Hey, by the way,
Right.
the Onion Cato, Jeff, that you could be in drag and get that comment. That's a really interesting comment. You could be in drag and get hate from Republicans. Not all Republicans, okay? Really, you're not going to get it's. I was in drag in Florida in a very, very conservative. I wasn't in drag. I was with somebody in drag. Hang on, they weren't in drag. I was with somebody who was transitioning. No, they weren't transitioning. They were a cross dresser. This guy was a construction worker, but he cross dressed, and we went out to a diner. I was with Lori and my sister and this guy, and he didn't claim say he was he was a guy. He was cross-dressing. Jeff, wait, well, I'm going to respond to that. We'll put it back up in a second. And we were in a very conservative area. Nobody even, you knew he was a guy. It was like not even, it wasn't a question that he wasn't trying really hard to pass. But he was
His
perfectly
pronouns were
fine.
he, him still, but he was
No,
across.
yeah, no, he was just him, but
Yeah.
he was, but he was wearing a dress and a wig and everything. It was fine. Everyone was just quite fine. I'm like, no, everyone treated him completely like with respect and like, we
Right.
spent a few hours together in public. I was nothing. So, and that was a very conservative area. So, like, anyway, Jeff,
This-
can you put that one back up really fast?
Just real quick, that makes me
Yeah.
think about what you were saying earlier when it comes to, I didn't say the term yet, but confrontation, like the
Yeah.
moment that you're like confronted with like realism rather than like being
Yeah,
behind the
yeah, it's
screen
okay. Yeah, I've
is
heard about these people in drag, but wow, here's somebody right here. So, but if you're in drag and throw on a MAGA hat, you're suddenly part of the group. Yeah, I always find that really interesting. I think it's true across the board. If you're, like on voting day, a Mac who sits in the front row and had his MAGA hat on, well, what right before class
tech.
started, this woman who had a Kamala Harris on, she's African American, she's Jamaican Caribbean American, but she came down to the front with him and it's like, I got to get a selfie with you. You know what I mean? Because it was the two of them and she's taking a selfie with her phone with the rest of the class in the background, and they were high-fiving it and stuff. You know what I mean? So it's like
That's awesome.
students are, yeah, it's awesome. It's like, it's fine. It's like people are surprisingly, yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 Is it the whole, like, it's usually the moderate and then like, I was thinking
Yeah.
about like, usually the moderate, I think you've said this before. It's like, the moderate are the
Yeah.
ones that we want to focus on, but like sometimes like the radical sides, or where it's like people think that everyone's like radical or like can't be with each other, but
Yeah.
just
Hey,
something along.
wait, I want to look at Cairo. Wait, hang on. What at AZ true, but it wasn't constructive. He just stated his opinion about how attractive she was. What was what was that? What's that referring to? Is that something that why are we talking about drag queen crab again? Seriously, and our schools are brainwashing kids and changing their belief stuff. Yeah. It's really not yeah, I don't know. I don't think if I was I don't think if I was in reference to the guy who was in drag, I didn't if that's it, I didn't say that he or she was or was not attractive. I said he was not trying to pass. So I want to be really clear about that. So yeah. Oh, a reference about yesterday. What did I say?
Yesterday in the
Did I
comments,
say-
there was a comment that one of the people was gorgeous, and so I took the comment off saying that in the chat we don't talk about people's appearances, and then people were trying to make the argument to me that you talk about people's appearances, but it felt like I was living in the Twilight Zone because you are talking about people's appearances as a descriptive thing, not as a attractive or unattractive thing. And that's the main thing that we don't allow within the chat, regardless of if it's positive or negative, because then if it's only positive and every single time somebody comes out and, this person's really attractive, and then not the people who the chat doesn't find attractive, they either drag them down or not say anything at all. And then
Nor do I.
So we just don't do any of it.
No, and nor do I ever make any reference to anybody in class who's attractive. Like not first, definitely not once in a while if there's something that we're playing on with a guy. No, I don't. I just don't do that. I don't do that because first off, it's creepy, man. I'm like this middle-aged. No, I'm an old. Fuck. I'm 64. Is that old? It's beyond middle age, man. I'm not going to make any weird statements about anybody being attractive. That's the first thing. Secondly, I don't look at people and have the idea that they are or are not attractive. Like I don't do that. I just don't do it. I don't do it in class. And so we're discussing Jeff's iron fist in a velvet glove. Yeah, no, Jeff, that is like, for those listening, that's hardcore. Jeff and I are hardcore about that. Like you don't, because it's like I'm watching these. I just read this article it was the Washington Post and the New York Times about this young girl who is a YouTuber, and like 95% of her millions of followers are men, are like old men. I'm like, dude, what? What, man? No, we're not doing that. We don't do that. And we're a college classroom, and we tell students that we let them know that if, unfortunately, they sometimes don't know that they're going to volunteer until later in the day. So they've already left their homes. They've gotten dressed and they've left their homes. And in the wintertime, it's not really an issue. But sometimes when the weather's really hot, man, there have been a couple times when I've told people they can't volunteer. We had this guy, he was in this like tank top that it was like a string coming down and he had big muscles, and I'm like, dude, you're not volunteering today, man. I can't wearing that. Like, you can't do that. Him I just told, but there have been other people it's like, no, you can't do that. It's because we get these really creepy comments and stuff, and like nobody knows. People have the idea that I choose volunteers in the classroom. This is where Jeff and I, the first time it really happened, that people have the idea that like, oh, Sam's just choosing the whatever women, right? And I'm like, oh man, no, we're not. Yeah, we're not doing that. That's just too creepy in that way. So yeah, so we're pretty hardcore about that. Yeah. So Jeff, the iron fist with the velvet glove. I love it. Yeah.
Earlier they were saying that I don't stand for free speech, which is hilarious. It's okay.
Yeah. I think Grandpa's place, there's a certain age you can get to where you can that flirt. I wouldn't say flirt, but you can just have fun with young because you're a grandpa. I mean, like you can just have fun with 20-year-olds, right? That's fine. I don't do that because I'm a professor and I just have to. I just hold that line and it's kind of not my way anyway. I mean, I joke around a lot, but it's pretty clear that I'm joking around about a lot of things. But Jeff, the hard thing with you, bro, is that you have to support for you. There are guardrails, man, on a chat. There are guardrails, and you have to hold them down. That's
I do want to reiterate again that our chat room and our live stream is not the government, and so therefore the First Amendment does not apply to us. We do stand for free speech more than almost any other chat room that I can think of. We do have words that are banned, so if you use them, they won't pop up, but they're pretty egregious words. And besides that, as long as, again, the ad hominems are attacking people rather than a position. So you can say that somebody is extreme, but if you're going to go even further than that, then no, that's an ad hominem. So like, just got to keep the chat a civil place. Exactly, uncivil law.
Well, the other side is that the thing with what people don't recognize is that this is a class, and so pretty early on, the university they were like, listen, whatever happens in the classroom is a reflection of the university, but also what happens in the chat room is a reflection of the university. And we don't think that's really necessarily the case, but this is what the folks up there have said, and they watch, they monitor, and they check things out. And it's like, look, because they have the idea that students are participating. And it's like, listen, there aren't hardly any students, although students in the classroom will watch the chat. They'll follow the chat. Sometimes after class, students will be like, dude, the chat was off the hook today. I'm like, what do you mean it's off the hook? Like, yeah, I was watching it, and something happened. And so anyway, so for Jeff and I, we are aware that, we're trying to follow university guidelines or desires or whatever. So we're trying to be really thoughtful. So we have to enforce some things. That's just the nature.
Not only that, but also YouTube has their TOS, and believe it or not, your YouTube account can get banned for what is said in your chat. I mean, even beyond Penn State, YouTube will also shut your stuff down if it's going too extreme.
Yeah. And Penn State, it's not that they'll shut us down. Well, they might. They probably wouldn't for the chat stuff, but they might actually, because we say, listen, we monitor the chat. We just
won't have a chat anymore.
Yeah, we wouldn't have a chat, and so we have decided that we really don't want that to happen, and so we have to be a little bit cautious about it. Yeah. And that's why some words there are different words that you can't even, like Jeff said, you can't even type. If you type them, they'll never show up. So you don't know what they are. We don't tell you what they are, but there are a whole bunch that we just says, Yeah.
Oh, never knew that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the nature of it.
In response to AZ, isn't Penn State public property, First Amendment? Penn State's campus is. You could go to, actually the university set up specific areas called free speech zones, where as long as you're not interrupting official proceedings of the university, such as classes, then you can stand there and do whatever you want. There's a guy who's been standing outside of the same building every single day for 35 years or something. Just preaching his truth of Jesus Christ. And he says some crazy things and has got caught on camera saying like some pretty, to him, wild stuff in front of hundreds of students who are all wrapped around him. There's professors who've gone out and talked to him. So of course you could. But again, this is YouTube.
Yeah. Hey, and I'm with you, cybernetic Qualinut. I'm with you. Like free speech, it's really less like a right and more of a social contract. I mean, really, and that's kind of how we see it here. Just know that we're just trying to work. We just don't want problems. What am I going to take Penn State to court or something. Like, I don't want that. Like, just guys, just like, I don't have time for that. You know what I mean? I don't need a dozen emails going back and forth and meetings and stuff. So we just try to be, just try to be.
Uncivil law said if chat is an official thing for the class, which is an official thing of the school, we could have a fun and exciting First Amendment discussion whether or not the chat is then protected or not. That would be a pretty cool discussion.
Yeah,
I think YouTube would probably say no, but because you still have to follow their TOS to use the chat. But yeah, it'd be interesting. Maybe if Penn State had their own internal chat, maybe.
Well, what Penn State would say is that, well, we should use the Penn State internal chat,
Yeah, you have to
why
have a
don't you
Penn
just
State
do that?
account. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, we can't do that because nobody else would be able to join, and then that's not fun. Like, come on, man, it's not fun. So anyway, all right, listen. Yeah, hey, you will never know. Yeah, that's really funny between the MSA and the Campus Crusade for Christ. Yeah. Oh my God. All right, listen, man. All right, Jeff, you got to go, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, Elijah, everybody, Jeff's got to take off. We will. I'd like to do something on Friday, but I won't be able to. We'll be off. So let me see. We'll try to do something. I'll try to definitely do a couple things. We'll be streaming one thing for sure from Korea. We'll stream. We'll do something else from Korea.
You'll be in
I
Korea
tried.
for 2 weeks, right?
Just 2 weeks. Yeah.
2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then for everybody, I'm going to put in fall break, the command, which will tell us information. So tomorrow is the final class before break that is going to be officially live streamed in 100 Thomas. And then next week, we're going to have a class on Tuesday and Thursday live streamed on the channel. However, it's going to be pre-recorded from previous semesters. And then you're more than welcome to come and join, as always, and chat and talk about the lecture. And then the week after, starting on technically Sunday the 24th to Saturday the 30th, there will be no classes the 25th to the 29th. And then we'll be back live at the beginning of December. So we'll see you all tomorrow, and then a little bit of a break, and then we'll be back.
And okay, yeah, thanks. Axel, no, I have not visited Sweden, but I need to go to Sweden. Like, I really, really do. All right, man. Okay, y'all. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Elijah. We'll talk.
All right. Thank you.
See you, everybody.